Hey everyone, this is Sean Hygen for Verve Cycling, and welcome to our 5th webinar for My Power Haute Route riders. This is the last webinar for those riders about to start the Haute Route Alps in just 3 short days. As usual, I'll cover some basic guidelines for the webinar. It's being recorded for anyone who can't attend the live presentation, and all live attendees are in listen-only mode to provide the best sound quality possible. But please feel free to ask me questions throughout the webinar. Use the chat box that's with GoToMeeting. I have it open in a separate window, so I'll be monitoring that as we go through the presentation. Feel free to ask questions at any time. The big event is finally here. The things that we're going to go over today is have a plan. Don't underestimate the value of mental prep and the cost of mental stress. Equipment checks and the importance of them. Nutrition, both on and off the bike. Be conservative at the beginning. I'm really going to stress that you guys hold yourself back a little bit at the start of each day and early on in the race. And Power Simplified, how to get the most out of your info crank through proper pacing. And the last thing is uploading data, asking me questions throughout your big event. Something that I wanted to cover is we've now had our first group of riders go through the Pyrenees, the first Haute Route this year, and they have just one more day to go, and we've built up a pretty extensive list of tips and topics to cover to help the following riders have a successful journey through the Alps and even the Dolomites. So I've updated the webinar from last week to include a lot of the common questions that I got throughout the week. So hopefully there's even more tips for the riders who have the Alps and the Dolomites coming up. All right, so let's get started. The first thing is to have a plan. Break it down. I took a snapshot of a typical schedule from the rider book, and if you look at it, it is jam-packed. 5:30 a.m. wake up and a 10 p.m. bedtime. Now, just to let you know, personally, that's a tight day, and that's not a lot of sleep. So for me, like, I'm somebody who needs ideally 9 hours when I'm racing or riding multiple days of hard training. So the first thing you want to do is look at the schedule and first of all, just accept the fact that you're going to have very little downtime. If you're planning on sightseeing or anything like that, other than when on your bike, it's probably not going to happen. But I also say, get in a routine. Being able to go on autopilot day after day, it not only minimizes stress, but it saves time. So take out the guesswork, take out the panic-stricken moments of, oh my gosh, did I bring my helmet? Where did I put my shoes? Did I pump my tires? Where's my bike computer? By having a schedule every day and even a list of things that you need every day, or even a packing list before you leave, will just help you stay calm and be confident that you have all of the things necessary. So not only, make a schedule, get in a routine, but that also means routinely putting your things in the same place every day. I know for me as a rider, one of the worst things that could happen to me was if I forgot my computer or my head unit and I didn't know where it was, and the thought of not having data for the day would just literally send me into a tizzy. So I made a routine of always taking my bicycle computer off of my bike and I put it in my shoes. I know it's kind of a weird place to put it, but I could always see it and I always knew. Like, I didn't have to wonder where I put my computer. I always knew that it was in my shoe, and I never had to, go through that panic in the morning of when I'm in a rush. Where's this? Where's that? Same thing with helmets or sunglasses. Even laying out your clothing the night before and just being able to put it on. I know that you're probably going to want to look at the weather and things like that, but laying out options and bringing extra clothing than you think you're going to need. Anything you can do to just reduce mental stress will have a huge impact on you. And so make a list of things to pack, bring extra things. Also bring extra small pieces of equipment that easily break. When I was on the road racing, I had a little tool bag that I just threw in my bike box every time I traveled with my bike, and it just had a list of things that were common helpful tools and common items that easily broke. And the list for me was I always had zip ties, I always had electrical tape, I always had some extra cables, brake cables and shifting cables, seat post clamp, a spare derailleur hanger, a multi-tool, and a good set of Allen wrenches. And you'd be surprised at the things you can fix and at least, get functional with those things. I also would keep like a master link for the chain too, and sometimes a spare chain, because those can easily, break. But anyways, that's just my list of what I had. Think about what you might need, and just put it in a separate bag, and then you have it. I know there's mutual support, and I'm sure it's great, but it's also the confidence of knowing that worst case scenario, you're pretty self-reliant as well. The last thing that I recommend is either printing the schedule or printing the guide or downloading it onto your portable device. Just having that handy so you can look at the profiles every day, that you can look at the schedule every day, get familiarized with, the towns and everything, I think is really important as well. So, save paper, not necessarily print it out anymore, but definitely have it on your phone or your tablet or your laptop that's easily accessible. And I say download it onto the hard drive, because you don't want to rely on internet. You want to just have access to it when you want to take a look at it. So remember, jam-packed schedule, minimize what you can. If there's some, maybe if there's something that you can skip, or if you have a roommate and you guys can somehow divvy up any of the duties, then I'd say go for it. Okay, next thing, mental focus. Do not underestimate the importance of mental focus. Just like minimizing, you want to minimize mental stress, you want to maximize mental focus. So I always tell my athletes to take a few minutes each day and gather your thoughts before the start of each stage, and focus on the task at hand. I mean, this is a really incredible event, competition that you're taking place in, and you've trained and you've prepared for this event for several months. I'm sure you've sacrificed family time or friendship time, and you're fit and you're ready for this. So now it's time to reap what you sow, right? You've put in the work and now you're ready. So take a minute every day and just really think about that. The next thing is staying focused on the ride. And this is really hard, especially when you're doing long events such as the Haute route and hours of climbing, and you might be isolated and find yourself in riding by yourself for extended periods of time, and it's really easy to lose that focus, and so much can go wrong in a split second. And I finished many stage races in my career not because I was stronger than people, but because I had the ability to focus. I kept my head about myself. I kept my wits about me. I rode within myself. I took calculated risks when it was worth it. But losing focus, it just takes a second to overlap someone's wheel, or to lose your focus while descending on a road you've never been down before. I just can't stress it enough. And maybe for me, I have a little saying to myself, and I don't know why it works, but it works. I just say focus, hygiene, focus, hygiene. When I find my mind drifting off to things that aren't related to the task at hand, I just say that to myself. And that leads into the next one of having a mantra. So obviously I have a couple of mantras. When it's about staying focused, I just tell myself to focus. Another good thing to do is just to check your form head to toe, toe to head. I think shrug my shoulders, take a deep breath, wiggle my fingers, wiggle my toes. Are my knees staying straight? Am I bouncing in the saddle? All those types of things can bring your mind back to that focus aspect. Having a mantra is more like when the going gets tough, when what hits the fan, what do you say to yourself to keep yourself going? What's your motivation? What's your power even? For me, a big one was something my husband taught me. He said, a little bit now or a lot later. And what that was whether I was trying to get onto the end of a break, or whether I was suffering alone off the front or suffering alone off the back, and the group was just 25 meters in front of me, or 50 meters, maybe even more. The saying I had to myself was, I can suffer a little bit now really hard, or I can suffer a lot later for longer all by myself. So for me, it was just that mantra to remind myself to dig just a little bit harder right now and make it back to the group or make it onto the break, or suffer a lot later when I don't get the results that I want, or I'm in the middle of nowhere all by myself. So have a mantra. Think about what you can say to yourself to really push through those critical moments. At the end of each day, I really suggest reflecting. What did you do right? There's always something that you were just like, you know what, I freaking nailed that. Or I did really good with my nutrition today, or I did really good pacing myself, or I just had fun. Okay, what's something that you could do a little bit better tomorrow? Maybe you didn't drink as much as you should have. Maybe you were rushed in the morning. You needed to give yourself a little bit more time. Maybe you didn't pace yourself so well. So then make a note of it, hopefully journal it in cycling analytics, write a little note like, hey, I did this really well today, this I didn't, even ask me a question, send me an email like, how do I do this, such and such thing better, and record it, and then let it go, move on. It's really important to not get down on yourself day after day after day. So I can't, I always tell my athletes in a stage race, start each day as if it were the first. So you go over the good, the bad, the ugly after the stage, and then you let it go and you start up the next day just like it's stage one again, and it's a brand new day and you got a clean slate. I think it's really important. It all ties into that mental focus and positive self-talk. Equipment check every day. This is a huge one for me because now numerous times on the Haute Route Pyrenees, I've had riders email me and say, well, my pedal balance is off because my knee started hurting or my back's been really sore. They're having some issue that they're like, hey, something's going on. And they think it's just an overuse situation, but actually something was wrong with their bike. One of them, their cleat slipped, and one of them, their saddle had actually broken, and they didn't know it. And I always start with the basics. Check your bike first, check your equipment. Is your saddle slightly off kilter? Did your handlebars come loose? Those types of things, you'd be surprised. It happened to me training in Mallorca this year. You'd be surprised with how much just a slight shift in your cleat can cause this sudden knee pain where you think, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to ride tomorrow. Like I said, it happened to me in Mallorca. I was riding and all of a sudden my knee started hurting and I was really kind of scared to say something because it was pretty early on in our training camp. And I thought, oh gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So we decided to stop for coffee. And the first thing I did was I looked at the bottom of my shoes to see if my cleats had slipped. And sure enough, one of the screws had come loose. And we're talking about, like not much. I would say a couple of millimeters, but I'm someone who's very particular about my position, and my body just was having none of it as soon as that cleat slipped. And so we were able to put the cleat back in position. My knee hurt for the rest of the day, but the next day it was fine. So lesson learned, right? Always start with the basics. When you get a new pain, take a look at your equipment. But not only that, just for safety reasons, you're going to be riding in probably varied weather conditions and obviously terrain. You're going to be putting strain on your equipment, and let's face it, it's high end, probably probably pretty lightweight stuff, and unless it's dialed in perfectly, it might not work like it should. So before and after each day, I say do a bike check. You should do it at the end of each stage just to give yourself the most time to go to the mechanics, go to neutral, the neutral mechanic tent and say, hey, something's going on here, and give them the most time to fix it. Again, eliminating that mental stress of the last minute, the day before, the morning of trying to get it fixed. And then I would do another check in the morning. Just, hey, you know what? Let me double check. I might have missed something. So, beginning and end of each stage. How do I do my equipment check? It's really pretty simple. I'm definitely not a professional mechanic. I do something called the gentle bike drop. I just pick my bike a couple inches off the ground and I gently drop it. You'd be surprised what you can find when you do that. Everything from loose bottle cages to a loose wheel, things can happen. So it's just a gentle bike drop. You just pick it up and drop it, just a couple inches. Listen for unusual noises. Bottle cages will rattle. We have quick release skewers. If you got a flat tire, maybe you got a neutral wheel or you had to stop and fix it. If the wheel isn't in properly and tightly, you'll hear it. It'll make a noise. So just, kind of big issues you want to listen for. I think it's important to check the headset. How do you check the headset? Well, if you squeeze the front brake and you just try to push the bike forward and back, if your headset is loose, which is where your fork and handlebars are attached, you'll feel some play in there. you'll get a little wiggle back and forth, and there shouldn't be any wiggle. It's no big deal if you don't know how to fix your headset. Take it to the mechanics. They'll dial it in perfectly. But that's a big one that can really wreck your day. Check your handlebars and saddle. You know, are your handlebars tight? Did they split position? Is your saddle, maybe if you leaned your bike against something or fell over, you know, a saddle can get nudged, you know, a centimeter. And that's a big change in your position. So every day, make sure those things are where they're supposed to be. I even actually mark my handlebars, and I put electrical tape around my saddle for the height. So if my handlebars move, I can see there's, you know, a little marker on my where it meets the stem, so I know if it's shifted. And if my saddle slips down, the tape gets wrinkled, so I know quickly. Chain cleaned and lubed. Oh my gosh, I'm sure we've all been in a hurry to get out on our bikes on certain days, and you get out there and it sounds like you have a flock of birds flying around you your whole ride because your chain is just chirping. Probably a good tactic for the competition. If you can block it out of your ears, you can annoy the heck out of them, but definitely make sure your chain's lubed and cleaned every day. A clean bike and a lubricated bike is a fast bike. Tires. Another thing, you know, don't self-sabotage. Minimize any incidences that you can. Look for cuts, holes, anytime. You know, it's way easier to fix the tire after the stage or before the stage than it is out on the road when you've got a big gash in your sidewall or something, right? Or you've got a nail, and even though it's like we can't resist it, you see a nail in your tire, the last thing you should do is pull it out, but what do we all do? We pull it out, and then you got a flat tire. So do those things before you get on the bike. Make sure that they're properly inflated. I'm kind of neurotic about my tire pressure, but it's something that I have to check every single day because every single ride, because I just have to know that there's not a slow leak somewhere. So whatever PSI that you're riding at, you know, make sure you're there. Brake rubbing, this is another big one for me and my athletes. If I have an athlete that tells me that they didn't do well in a race because their brakes were rubbing, they get absolutely no pity from me. You know, they should have checked that before. There's no excuse to have for having your brakes rubbing on a ride or a race. You can check it so easily before you get on them. So do that. Spin the wheels. All you got to do is spin the wheels. And shifting. Make sure that it's smooth and precise. A lot of you are going to be putting, you know, all of you are going to be putting miles and miles on your bikes. If you don't have electronic shifting, which probably most of us don't, you know, cables can stretch. And again, things can get bumped. So just run through your gears when you hop out on your bike in the morning. Make sure that everything's good. If not, you know what I'm going to say. Go to the neutral mechanics and have them sorted out. It's likely a quick fix for them. And then other things to check. Shoes and cleats, we covered that, the importance of it. And I always carry a saddlebag with a puncture kit. You know, I carry a CO2 with a couple tire levers and a tube. Even though I know that there's going to be neutral support, it's more than, you know, one, it's preventative, and two, it's just having the confidence of knowing that I'm prepared for what the day is going to bring, and I can handle it myself. So I just recommend, it's worth the wait, right? That a tire and a tube is going to cost you, or a tube and CO2, or even a frame pump. Just carry it and be self-sufficient. Okay, questions? Anybody have any questions at this point? Okay, moving on to nutrition. This is, first we'll cover off the bike, and then we'll go over on the bike. Let's see here. Off the bike, eat and drink more fluids than you think you need. I can promise you a 7-day stage race is not the time to go on a diet. You're going to be burning calories, and because you're going to be on the bike for so long, your metabolism is going to be elevated for several hours after you get off the bike as well. You know, when I in my days when I was in the middle of a stage race, I literally would have to keep some sort of like bar or protein or recovery drink by my bed when I went to bed at night, because chances are I couldn't even eat enough during dinner or throughout the day that I would wake up in the middle of the night hungry and I needed to eat something. So if you wake up hungry, you need to eat something. So even stash a snack by your bed at night, but eat and drink more than you think you need. Huge, huge, huge. Eat and try to eat something within 15 to 20 minutes of the ride finished every single day. This is so important for numerous reasons. Probably a lot of you have heard of the glycogen window, which is a little bit bigger than 15 to 20 minutes. But also the biggie with the 15 to 20 minutes is eating some carbs and some protein will actually minimize the cortisol, a stress hormone in your body from the big effort that you've put in. So not only is it replenishing nutrients and calories and muscle glycogen, but it's also helping your body with the stress hormones, minimizing stress on your body as well. So definitely make eating something small with some protein and carbs as soon as possible every day. You saw that the schedule was super tight. So, and because it's such a long event, it's not like you're doing a, 30-minute to 1 hour criterium where you really don't want to have anything in your stomach, where you'd want to eat like 3 hours before the event. If you eat something an hour, hour and a half before the ride start in the morning, you're going to be okay. Is it ideal? Probably not. But on the other hand, you know what? Sleep is more important, I think, than having a completely digested meal. So I would maximize sleep time over getting up early to eat my breakfast. Unless, of course, you can get up super early and then go back to bed, which might be an option. Try to eat familiar foods whenever possible. Again, a 7-day tour through the mountains is not the best time to try something that you've never had before. You're probably going to have to, but at least try to stick with things or ingredients that you know work for you as much as possible. And then when you're on the bike, make it a goal to drink a bottle every hour. And a personal preference of mine is I carry one electrolyte drink and I carry one bottle of water. I just like to have water sometimes to kind of rinse my mouth out, but make sure that you're having some sort of, hypotonic, isotonic drink, something with electrolytes and minerals in it, in addition to just water, because you're going to be sweating a lot and you're going to be losing a lot of salt and minerals. So you'll definitely want to include some sort of sports drink, at least every other one, and one bottle an hour. The other thing is I would try to eat something every hour if it's poor weather conditions or you're going to be in a big group. Sometimes you can take something and break it up into small pieces, or just keep it loose in your pocket if it's dry, so you can just reach back and grab it. But try to nibble on something every hour. You just want to try to maintain that calorie consumption as possible. The last thing I recommend is to try to eat real food as much as possible early in the ride and early in the event. I've done numerous 24-hour mountain bike races, and a big key for me is to always stay on real food as long as I can until the very end, when I'm just so tired and I'm so empty that I just need energy quick and fast and easy. And if you start out a 7-day race and you're going straight for the gels on day one and only gels, I can pretty much guarantee that your stomach's going to be a mess by day 7. Just all those simple sugars can wreak havoc on you. And so I always say early on in the day, early on in the race, focus on real food. And then, when it gets to like, I'm just trying to survive this thing or go as fast as I can, that's when you go for the quick, easy performance stuff. Otherwise, another thing is you just get sick of those things. It's a lot of sweet stuff, and you can just, if you lose your taste for it early on in the event, then what are you going to do later on when you really, really need it? So that's my recommendation for nutrition. Aid stations, what to do and what not to do. This one I actually took from Train Right, Carmichael Training Systems, but I just thought it was a great blog post. I wanted to pass it on to you guys. Aid stations, you're going to go through a lot of them. Big thing is, just like at the beginning when I said have a plan, have a plan. Cool, calm, and collected is the best way to go through a stop and get back out on course quickly. Think about what you need when you're a mile out or a couple kilometers out from the aid station. Do you need water? Do you need sports drink? Do you need food? Do you need gels? Think about it and really plan your rest stop out in your mind before you get there. Maybe you need to change clothes. Maybe you need to put on a jacket, take a jacket off. Think about how you're going to do that, and having the plan and executing it will just make everything go so much smoother. What are you going to need in your pockets? Maybe your pockets are empty. Don't forget to put some sort of food in your pocket as well. I don't recommend relying completely on aid stations for all of your food. You should always have an emergency bar and gel in your pocket. Again, prepare for the worst. It's not going to weigh you down. It's not going to affect your results by carrying an extra gel or two or an energy bar in your pocket. And who knows what might happen to you that day. So always plan for it. The next thing is don't linger. Get what you need and get out. Get in, get out. You can lose valuable time in the aid stations, and it's pretty much free time too, right? Because just like you can lose time, so can your competitors. So don't give them any edge. Get in, get out, go to the bathroom. Sitting around talking in an aid station, that's not the time to do it. Wait till you're done with the race and then make sure that you're sitting down when you do it, but we'll get to that later. If you need to, just grab what you need and then you can nibble on it as you roll out. At least you're covering some ground rather than sitting there eating. And the last thing is smile and say thanks. You might be having a miserable day on the bike, but the support crew is there, and it's likely that they're volunteering or probably not making a lot of money to do it. And they're out there supporting you to, give you a chance to do something incredible that you love. Be nice to them, tell them thanks, say, tell them about it if something cool happened to you out on the course too. So those are my recommendations from aid stations taken from Carmichael training. All right, lastly, we're going to cover some questions that have come from most of our riders on the Pyrenees, some of you leading up into the Alps, and these have been updated since the last webinar too. First question I get a lot is, what's the best way to manage the last week? How many days before the first stage do you usually recommend we should stop training? All right, that's a $64,000 question, right? Look at it this way. A week out, you got what you got. I've been looking at all of your power files and training files. You guys have done the work. You're ready. At this point on, if you just go and do hard workouts and long workouts the week before the event, you're just going to put yourself in a hole. And you are going to have 7 of likely some of the hardest days you've ever had on a bike. So you need to go in absolutely fresh. This is where that training load and stress balance comes into play. Originally, I put 10 to 20. And I didn't change those numbers, but I did notice that a lot of people going into the Pyrenees actually went in with a stress balance from 15 to 25, and I think that was even better. The big thing I wanted to stress is that you have to have positive. You cannot be in the hole going into the Haute route. Now, if you're doing a one-day event or a shorter event, that's a totally different situation, and some riders can actually go in a little fatigued. 7-day stage race through some big mountains, got to be fresh and ready. So another thing I say is keep the intensity, lose the volume. I think it's important to keep the engine revving, but not to empty the tank or not to flood the engine. So, maybe some short, moderate intervals to keep the legs, and all systems working, but you don't want to do so much that it puts you in the hole. So you keep some short intervals, but you take out a lot of the volume. How many training sessions would I recommend during the last week? Again, it depends on stress balance. If you haven't done a great job, and 4 days out you've got a negative stress balance, you're on the couch. You just rest at this point. But generally, if it's an ideal situation, I would say a minimum of 2 to 3 days off the bike. I would say a week out, 2 to 3 days complete rest. 1 to 2 easy spins, and 1 to 2 days of shorter, moderate intervals. If you have questions about specific workouts, shoot me an email. I'm happy to send you some suggestions for that. Next question, how would you recommend that we pace our rides in the first stages compared to our FTP? And at what percentage of it would you recommend we do them? What about the climbs? This is a really good question, and some interesting things have come up during the Pyrenees, so I'll cover those throughout this. But generally, the big thing is you want to pace yourself on the climbs. And when I say pace yourself on the climbs, that means for some people not riding too hard, but other people, that's where you want to spend it, right? Because the climbs are where you can make the most ground and make up the most time on the competition, and it's the most bang for your buck. So depending on the cyclist and their level of experience and training, anywhere from 75 to 95% of their functional threshold power, or their maximum power that they can sustain for an hour. The more experience you have in riding and racing, generally the closer to FTP you can climb and hold the effort for extended periods of time and even days. Using myself as an example, I was someone who did a great deal of stage racing and a lot of racing uh, back in the day. Yes, was it, oh gosh, I don't even know how many years ago now, 10, 15 plus years ago? Yep, it was. But guess what? All those miles, they still have a benefit. All those, 10-day stage races, 5-day stage races that I put myself through, I'm still reaping a benefit from it now because my body knows what that feels like and can tolerate it. So I was pretty surprised. I went and did a training camp in the Alps. I think it was in July this year. And I really didn't do any rides longer than about 2 hours prior to going, and then went on to ride, anywhere from, 3 to 5 plus hours a day for 12 days with significant amounts of climbing. And I was pretty happy. On one of the last days, I climbed Stelvio from the long side to the 48 switchback side, which was totally epic and cool. I maintained for 2.5 hours about 91% of my FTP. That's a rare case. My strength was as a stage racer. I'm a very consistent rider. I have a lot of miles on my legs. I can get away with that. Some of you are doing a multi-day event for the first time ever, and some of you, you just haven't ever climbed this much. Start on the conservative side. Start around 75. If you're feeling good an hour into it, you can always bump it up. Start early on in the stages, and you can always add the intensity. What's really hard is when you've gone too hard and then you try to recover, you're just not getting that power back. So just err on the side of caution and conservative. If you don't know what your body's like or what you can handle, you've never done anything like this before, 75 to 85. If you're an old, hand at this and it's your fourth Haute route and you've done great and you know how to, pace yourself, take care of yourself, 85 to 95. Set yourself up for success. Here's the big thing that a lot of our riders, our My Power riders, have passed on to me that I stressed early in their last webinar. Find a group on the flat. Always try to ride in a group because it's always going to save you energy. On the climbs, ride your own race. Find your pace, your zone, your percentage of FTP, and stick with it. Don't surge. Don't try to go with other riders. Don't worry. If you pass people, great. Don't slow up. If you're, find your rhythm and stay in your groove. On the flat, you're better off waiting up for a group that's a minute or two or even 3, 4, 5 minutes behind you because you're going to save so much energy in the group. It's just better. You're just going to have a better ride. Or if you're competitive and you're really going for overall placing, that's a little bit now a lot later. If there's a group coming by or there's a group, a minute up the road, maybe it's worth it to twist yourself inside out a little bit and make that group because you're going to have a much faster pace. So it works both ways, right? Either wait up or you dig a little bit deeper to make the next group. But it's always best to be in a group on the flats. Save your energy and power for the climbs. It's also really important, eat and drink on the flats. Are you going to be drinking on the climbs? Absolutely. But it's really hard to choke down something to eat, in the middle of a 2.5 hour climb. Do it on the flats if you can, or at least at the top of the hills and on your way down. That's when you eat something. Spin, spin, spin on the flats. You're going to be grinding out gears. I've been looking at cadence for these people over the week, and first of all, bring more gears than you think you're going to need to. Go compact. I put on a triple. Go with a pie plate on the back for a cassette, long cage derailleur, whatever it takes. Have more gears than you think you're going to need and use them. And then spin on the flats, because likely you're going to have cadences anywhere from 60 to 80 on the climbs. So if you can spin at 90 plus on the flats, it's just going to keep those muscles supple. It's going to help flush out the waste and things that make your legs feel bad. So spin, spin, spin on the flats. The last thing about the flats or being in a group, and I apologize, I don't have exact details on this, but it's come to my attention that several segments of stages have been neutralized, or only certain portions of stages are the actual times for results. You have to know this. If you don't know it before the stage, ask. I'm sure there's a pre-ride meeting or there's a debriefing at night. Attend those meetings and find out what exactly is timed. What are you going for? Because if it's a section where they're saying, hey, maybe the weather's going to be nasty and we've opted to neutralize this, go as slow as you want. Again, I would still recommend staying in a group, not only for energy, but also the camaraderie, right? It's a chance to talk with people and just be with other people who are doing the same thing that you're doing, and it's cool to share that, right? But please make sure that you know the timing procedure and ride accordingly or race accordingly. All right, so I think that covers pacing yourself. This is another one. I've had some people who are coming from heart rate training backgrounds or just going by FTP, and they asked me just point blank, do I really need to train with power? And I said, just as bluntly back to them, if you really want to get better, yep. So why, right? Well, when you say you want to get better, what does that mean? Well, it means most often that you want to get faster. And if you want to get faster, you need a bigger engine, most of all. And what do I mean by that? So let's see. The short answer is that power is the most effective tool you can get to go faster on a bike. And the more likely, it's been proven that you're more likely to achieve your goals on the bike with the power meter. So let me explain that a little bit. Heart rate doesn't really tell you that much all by itself. It is a good, even great intensity measuring device, but it's sort of like a tachometer in a car. It tells you how hard the engine is revving or how hard your body is working, but that's about it. Input data or heart rate data isn't really useful until it's compared with some measure of output, and output would be power. So think of it this way. Heart rate is the result of the work, and power is the work. Again, if we're looking at results from racing, well, they don't give awards to racers who worked the hardest or who had the highest heart rate. They give those who had the fastest time, if you're talking about a time trial. Again, this is like for an individual timed event, which is the Haute route. If we're talking about mass starts events, there's a whole other thing about using power that you can use. But for you guys, you're doing a timed event. So generally, that means either putting out the highest power or being the most efficient with your power. So if you really want to get better, you got to get faster. Heart rate, going back to heart rate doesn't really tell you that much. So let's just say, what if your heart rate's 10 beats higher than usual? What does that mean? Is it good or is it bad? The only way to answer that question is to know, are you putting out more power or less power than usual? Then we can rate that heart rate. So there, that kind of gives you that tie of input versus output, or using output with input. So another, building the engine, that just makes me think of cars right away. So if I have a race car and I want the car to go faster, well, do I want fast racing wheels or maybe a fairing on the back that'll, increase my speed or less drag or something like that? Yeah, it's probably gonna, it's gonna have a minimal improvement in my times, but really what I need is a bigger engine. That's the easiest thing. Yeah, I can spend a lot of money on fancy, race wheels, or I could spend the money on a bigger engine. And which one's going to give me the most for my investment? Definitely the bigger engine, right? So how, oops, I think I just, so how do you build a bigger engine? Well, the biggest thing to immediately is you get correct intensity straight away versus the lag time with the heart rate. And there's a couple of different lag times with the heart rate. So for example, some people when they're doing intervals won't necessarily, and they're training with heart rate, they won't necessarily start the interval until their heart rate gets up to the prescribed zone or value. Well, with power meter, you just go boom to 300 watts. It's pretty immediate, so you're not having any wasted time. And when I say wasted time, it's wasted time actually doing work, waiting for your heart rate to catch up. And that's on longer intervals. The other thing is if you're doing shorter intervals, the interval's over before your heart rate catches up. So you don't really know if you are in the zone or not. If you're doing a 1-minute interval, chances are, and you're supposed to go all out, you'll finish that interval and your heart rate will still be going up. So you can't even use heart rate zones. The next thing is it's precise and constant. So there's no guesswork. And no taper, which means more focused training. And what do I mean by the taper? Well, that's another interesting thing that happens. It's called cardiac drift or aerobic decoupling. Let's say you're doing a 20-minute interval at your FTP or functional threshold heart rate or power, right? So if you're using power, you're going to maintain 200 watts for the entire 20 minutes. If you're using heart rate, what's going to happen? Cardiac drift. So you will start at a certain effort level. First of all, you're going to waste the time getting your heart rate up that high because you want to do it slow. Otherwise, if you just sprint off the line, we know, that's not a good method either. So with a power meter, you can just go straight to 200 watts without having to sprint and go too hard. Anyways, as you get to your heart rate's going to gradually go up. Well, one of two things will happen on an extended interval. Either your heart rate will go up and your power will stay the same, or your heart rate will stay the same and your power will go down. It's just how the body works. The fitter you are, the less it happens, or the less decoupling you have. It's more likely parallel, but it will happen. So if you're doing a 20-minute interval and you're supposed to be at 150 heart rate, at the end of the 20 minutes, your heart rate, well, if you're using heart rate, you're still at 150, but likely your power's probably dropped from 200 to 180. So now you've lost power throughout the interval. Excuse me. The next thing, and so this also means quality over quantity. You can do less, more focused training because you've taken out the wasted time and the lag time and all those things and just focused on, that task at hand, and that's a very precise, constant power output. The other really important aspect is when you're training with heart rate, kind of leads you to believe that the only thing that's important is the heart. Yes, you need to build cardiovascular fitness, but you also need to focus on muscle. And training with a power meter allows you to put more focus on training the muscles, not just the heart. Pacing. Power meter is huge for pacing and for timed events. For you guys doing the Haute route, you can maintain your prescribed power whether it's on the flats, whether it's on climbs, it's a headwind, or it's a tailwind. All things can happen, all kinds of things can happen if you're relying on heart rate or rate of perceived exertion. Sometimes you may be going too hard uphill because you're excited and you just want to, oh, I'm on my first mountain, let's just go for it. Well, if you know your FTP and you know that 75 to 85 or 85 to 95% zone, you can actually look down and see exactly where you're at. What happens if you have a massive headwind? How's that going to affect your power? Well, you're going to be working a lot harder. So then it's, you know what, you can get sucked into that. I'm just trying to beat this headwind. I'm trying to beat this headwind. Meanwhile, you're going way too hard. So the power can tell you actually to ease up. hey, you know what? I'm working a lot harder than I should be here. I need to step back because this is unsustainable for me. I won't be able to hold this effort. And the last thing is on a tailwind. Yeah, tailwinds are great. Generally, do you want to like bury yourself? Sometimes when you get a tailwind, you want to use that time to recover. But it's also looking down at your power and seeing how low it is actually gives you an idea of, okay, you know what? I really need to shift into a bigger gear and get on the gas a little bit. With pacing and heart rate, it's so variable. It's anything, like we said, you can excitement, adrenaline, cardiac drift, or aerobic decoupling that I just covered. What your diet's been like. Have you had caffeine? Are you dehydrated? Is it hot? All these things can have a huge impact on your heart rate for the day. So, what you're used to training at can be totally different, and that's why it's so hard to use heart rate as actually a means to pace yourself. And the last thing that power is really beneficial for is fitness over time, tracking changes and progress. With heart rate, it's kind of hard to see, are you getting better or not? There's some broad strokes that you can look at, but with fitness over time, your watts per kilo or your power should be going up. And you can see these trends. Or have you plateaued? Are you training so hard and you're stopped making progress? Well, then it's time for a rest. Or even are your numbers dropping? Are you overtrained? These are all things that your power meter can tell you. So if you want to get better, my suggestion is, yes, I truly believe that you need a power meter. Okay, additional tips in general. Pace yourself. 7 days is a long time. Start conservatively. Something I always say to my athletes is, likely you can't win in the first stage, but you sure can lose. And it's all about those, focusing and using your info crank for pacing. If you go out and just smash yourself to smithereens on day one and don't listen to any of this, then you're just asking for trouble, and it's really hard to come back from that. Give yourself every benefit that you can. Pace yourself, use your info crank for the pacing. If you don't know how to pace yourself, send me an email, ask me. Take care of yourself. This is the time when it's okay to be a little selfish and make yourself the priority. I'm not sure if you've heard it before, but being a pro athlete is actually a very selfish occupation. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It absolutely has to be, right? Because professional athletes are dependent on their body to earn a living. And their eating, sleeping, drinking life is dependent on their means to support themselves. Pretend you're a pro athlete for the week. Be a little selfish. Make yourself the priority. Put yourself first. Sleep as much as you can. that's just it. You know what? Do whatever you can. Like I said, look at that schedule. If there's something you can cut out, cut it out. Get out of your chamois. Chamois time is not training time, although we all like to claim it. 7 days and all kinds of weather conditions, I would definitely get out of that kit as soon as possible. It'll help you prevent saddle sores or any other issues that can happen downstairs, and your body will thank you. Optimal recovery window. We talked about this earlier. For maximum refueling, recovery, and nutrient absorption, eat and drink something, and make sure it includes some carbs and a little protein as quickly as possible after each stage, within 15 to 20 minutes. Stay off your feet. I know you want to run around and see things maybe, or walk, or I'm not sure. You want to just walk around. I would minimize the time walking. And legs up is a big one. As soon as you can after each stage, after you get out of your chamois and after you eat something, I would always get a pillow and put my legs up against the wall in my hotel room. Pillow under my head, legs up. Don't lock your knees out. And the goal should be 5 minutes for every hour that you rode on the day. It'll really increase recovery, blood flow to the area, and it prevents pooling in the lower extremity. So 5 minutes for every hour, legs up against the wall. Feeling pain, this is another big thing that's come up. People, you're going to get sore. You might have some injuries. You're going to just really be pushing yourself to the limit. Biggie, 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 no NSAIDs. What does that mean? No anti-inflammatory, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, even aspirin, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs is what that stands for. And a couple of reasons. One, you don't want to mask the pain. I think it's really important to be in touch with your body and feel things. But the even bigger issue is liver and kidney function. When you take ibuprofen or any other anti-inflammatory drug on endurance or ultra endurance training or races, it can really, really, really impair kidney function to the point where you can go into renal failure, and it's a scary thing, and I would hate for anybody to do that. So please skip the acetaminophen, ibuprofen, naproxen sodium, any of those types of things. If you have questions, ask me, but just don't take them. If you are feeling pain, like I said before, check your bike, check your equipment, even check your clothing, check your chamois if things are bugging you down there. Take it to the neutral support if you have questions about anything. And other things that you can do, stretch after each day. If you can, bring a foam roller, roll it out, self-massage, all those types of things. Drink, stay hydrated, flush waste products out of your body. You'd be surprised how much that can help. Take an ice bath. All those types of things I recommend. Rice. What does rice mean? I don't mean like go and make a batch of rice and eat it. Rice is rest, ice, compress, and elevate. If something's hurting you, like your knee, well, rest it, ice it, compress it, that means wrap it, and elevate, put it up. Lots of things that we've already covered. Again, questions, I'm here to help. And the last thing is, a lot of the riders from the Pyrenees have told me, holy crap, there is no downtime. It is a jam-packed schedule. So if you think you're going to have time to catch up on work or have lots of time to talk to friends or anything like that, chances are it's not going to happen. You're going to be eat, sleep, drinking, and riding your bike or racing your bike. You're really not going to have time for anything else. So just accept that and leave any extracurricular stuff out of the plan. Really, again, focus on this event. It's huge. You're ready for it. You've trained for it. And I'm really excited to see all of the data from you guys as soon as you get going. So I think that's about it. Oh, no, I was wrong. Additional tips on the bike, sorry. During the ride, change hand positions regularly. Another biggie here that people just seem to forget about when they get really, really tired. On the tops of the handlebars, out on the brake hoods, in the drop. It'll help with upper body strain a lot, and just make sure that you're rotating through and shrugging your shoulders and stretching your neck and back if you need to. But really, just make sure that you're moving those hands around. It'll help a lot. Carry more food and clothing than you think you'll need. I always pack a rain jacket. It's worth the wait. And chances are it'll ensure that maybe it won't rain if you carry it. I know that seems to happen to me. If I ever don't carry it, that's when I get caught without it. Always have some food in your pocket. Carry a flat tire kit. These are things that we covered. I just wanted to reiterate. Try to ride in a group on the flat. Don't give up. You're stronger than you think. I promise you that. Be safe on the descent. Chances are you can't win, but you can definitely lose, right? Ride within yourself. Be safe. And have fun and go for it. This is the opportunity of a lifetime, and I hope that you all get a chance to do it again, but you might not. So embrace it, live it, and love it for everything that it is. It's going to be good days, bad days, or good moments, tough moments. Love it for all of that, because you guys are going to have the experience of a lifetime. I think we covered this earlier. Optimal long-term stress, short-term stress, and stress balance. I wish I had a magic number that I could give everybody, but it's completely individual. If you want me to look at your data, I'm happy to do that. That's what I'm here for. But it's it's dependent on the amount of historical data you have, results, and experience. It also requires an understanding of your own body and how it responds and adapts to different situations. A general guideline, I will toss this out, is somewhere between 0 and 25, likely 15 to 25. I covered this early on. Make sure that you go in rested. You know, I would really aim for a stress balance of 15 to 25. If you just don't want to have any fatigue on your body. All right, and that's it. Questions, comments, email me or chat them to me. I'll wait on the line for a couple of minutes, but otherwise, I will send out the recorded link and slides to all of my power ladders. Hope you guys enjoyed the webinar. Thanks so much for attending.